Hello, I'm Kirsha Fox, author of the Deception and Justice series. I'm a homeschooling mom, reader, and gamer. My co-host Julia J.K. Allen can't join us tonight, but our guest is ND Testa. She is an Italian-American author who aims to give readers an escape from reality with her books. A gym enthusiast, fashionista, and skincare addict, she also enjoys snowboarding, riding horses, traveling, and learning new languages. We're so excited to have her. Can you tell me a little bit about your writing journey? What got you started and why?
Okay, so I am Nicole and I go by the pen name ND Testa.
Mhm,
And I have been writing pretty much my entire life. So I started out writing stories. My mom got me a journal and I just was writing different stories. I used to, write bedtime, tell my sister bedtime stories before she went
mhm.
to sleep. And I started reading the Harry Potter series with my dad. And that really got me into the world of fantasy, which I really love. And I've known that I always wanted to be a writer and I wanted my books to, just inspire readers and help them love reading. But I never really knew how to go about that. And it wasn't until I got older and started connecting with people on social media, the Bookstagram community, the Book Talk community, that I started learning about self publishing and how to do that. And that's kind of where my journey has taken off.
Absolutely. It's so funny how many of us know that we're storytellers from a really young age.
Hmm.
You grew up on Narnia and Harry Potter and Aragon and just all of these wonderful worlds that feel so real when you delve into them. And then to turn around and show somebody else the world that you created is just, it's awesome. It's the best feeling ever, isn't it?
It really is. Yes. I really enjoy that. And I grew up reading Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, Aragon, and they were really great stories that inspired my love in fantasy and magic.
Mm-hmm. What genres do you write and what drew you to them?
So I write fantasy
Mhm.
with a little bit of romantasy twisted in, and I write mystery. And they're all based from like the books that I grew up with. So I grew up reading Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, Aragon, anything by Rick Riordan, the
Mhm.
Lost Chronicles of Merlin, and I also read the Boxcar Kids, Nancy Drew, Hardy Boys. So I love those genres. I love mystery. I love giving my mind a workout, trying to figure out who did it, putting the pieces together. And I love the fantasy with like the magic and the epic adventures. And now that I am gotten older, I have been really loving, Rebecca Yarros and the Emporium series. And that's kind of what's gotten me into the whole like romantasy genre and wanting to add that into my fantasy books that I write now.
Mhm. I feel like the romantasy genre is really going through something of a renaissance right now, where like there's so many more indie authors coming up and just creating so many wonderful new um, stories for us. And yes, I really strongly agree with that. And there's nothing more than I love than a twisty plot. I try to write twisty plots in my own books, and it's always a struggle to like, did I foreshadow correctly? Are all the breadcrumbs there? Did I mislead the reader correctly? Um, and then at the end to smack them with the ending, and they'll go, "Oh gosh, how did I not see that coming?" And
Yeah, it is true, and it takes a lot of work. Like it
mhm,
really is so much work to build a world. It really is. It takes there's so much you have to think of. And then
yes,
even when I do like my beta reads and stuff, a lot of my beta readers will bring up stuff that I didn't even think of. Like they'll be asking questions and I'll be like, I never thought of that. Guess I need to like include that. So it's
yes,
been really good. And I think like with the romantasy genre, it's a great combination that I love of fantasy and romance and,
mhm,
happy endings and adventures. And that's what I like to give the readers when they read my books.
mhm. Absolutely. You have to establish the history, the governments or government, the attitudes that they have around different things, what's taboo, what's accepted, how is the world different from our own? And then
Hmm.
you have to introduce all of that in a really organic way.
Oh, like telling, not showing.
Yeah, you have to show it correctly. Yes.
Yeah, like no, like a ton of prose stuff like that, where they
Mhm.
just like you just tell and don't show. That's true.
Yeah. But I mean, you have to keep the conversations organic. you know, and bring things out gradually. And it's just such a trick, but it's my favorite trick.
Mhm.
And I
Me
love when
too.
an author can do that successfully for me.
Yes, I love that too.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about your writing process? How do you go from like idea to finished draft?
It's a lot. It's a struggle. It's basically the pulling your hair out, banging your fist against the wall. It's hard because writing is not my full time job. I wish it was, but but it's not.
Mm-mm.
I work full time during the day, part time jobs in addition to my full time job, and then I work out. So really, that's the only time I get to write is at nighttime, which I hate. I have a love hate relationship with because you do so much during the day. You got to get up early. You're tired, so I know I only have a certain window to write in. So my
Mhm.
process is just really kind of like thinking about my story during the day whenever I can, and kind of like doing a little bit of plotting in my notebooks before I write, just so I have like a goal that I have to reach. Like, okay, this night I'm going to write this battle scene, or I'm going to write this romantic scene, or I'm going to write this scene, just so that I have you know, a plan to go on. And it's all about being kind to yourself too, because if you put too much pressure on yourself, then the ideas don't flow correctly. And that's what's happened to me. Like, I have put a lot of pressure on myself that, I want to be successful in this, and I want to, make enough money where I could be a full time author. And when you put too much pressure on yourself, like the ideas don't flow, and then you end up struggling. And you just got to be kind to yourself, and you just got to kind of just sit down and write it and get it done, and not allow so much outside influence to influence you, because a lot of times, like, we're always trying to figure out like what's the market, what's the readers want, like, but in the end, while that is true and you have to do that, but you also have to stay true to yourself. So sometimes, like, you just got to write a story because you like writing it, and hopefully maybe it'll find the right audience in the process, because it's just that's
Mhm.
what you got to do. And you can't always change yourself, because if you look, we've seen like all the popular, books throughout the years. Like, we had Harry Potter, then we had the Twilight series, then we had I don't know, 50 Shades of Grey, I think that was, even though I
There was
never read it.
definitely a craze around there.
And
Yeah.
then and now we're into the Rebecca Yarros Emporium
Mhm.
craze. So it's like, it's just about, like, there's some similarities between them, and then there's some differences that make them stand out. So you never know, because the market's always changing, but you can take that into account, but you still need to, stay true to who you are as well. So
Yes.
like, the writing process is just like, for me, it's just trying to get it done. And then there's some nights where, I can't write. And so I don't force myself to, or I'm not feeling good, but I don't make it more than like 2 nights that I go without writing. So it's like, if one night I can't, I make sure the next night I sit my butt there and we get it done.
Mhm. You have touched on so many different things, and I agree with all of them. Yes, you have to use all of your little stolen moments to be thinking about your story so that when you sit down, you kind of know what's going to happen. And yeah, the self discipline to actually write, even when you're tired, to write, even when you're exhausted. And it's so funny because you're looking forward to it. But when you're actually doing it, you're ripping out your hair, you're pounding the wall, you're screaming at your characters, and they're like, why are you doing this? And you're like, because it's my favorite thing. Okay. Like,
Mhm.
like, it's such a labor of love, but it is a labor.
It really is. And writing during the nighttime is wild. I know some people are like good with writing at night. Me, not. It's a love hate relationship. And the best part is like, when you're in a better frame of mind and you actually read what you wrote during the nighttime, you're like, what is this? Like, what was I trying to say? Like, is this another language or something? Like, or sometimes it'll be like, oh,
Mhm.
I wrote that? That's actually kind of good. So
Yeah.
it really just depends. Like, sometimes I feel like when I'm like half asleep and I'm writing, my mind wanders. And it isn't until later that I'm kind of like, what was I trying to say with that?
I have a really a mantra that I stick to when I'm trying to write and I feel like I'm too tired or the words aren't going. And I just like whisper, like, let it suck. Just write it terrible. Write it, but write it.
Hmm.
I can always fix it later. If it doesn't work, I can rip it out, but I need to write something and I need to advance this plot. I need to, you know,
Yeah, like just get it done because in the end, you're always going to be able to. I mean, we do hundreds of rewrites. So
Yes.
whatever it doesn't, as long as you get that first draft done, then you can just work from there and polish it.
Yes. Yes. And like if you can't write, edit. If you can't do that, market. If you can't do
Mhm.
that, like brainstorm. If like you have to keep that momentum going as much as you can because if you start letting yourself off too much, like it's hard to pick that up again. You
Yeah.
know? Which isn't to say that you have to write every single night to be an author to make this work. Like I don't know anyone who actually writes every single day, you know
Hmm.
when you're working a full-time job, a part-time job, taking care of yourself, doing doing your chores, doing your laundry, like having a social life, any of that, like it's so hard to squeeze it all into our lives. We're so busy.
Yeah, that's true.
But like absolutely kudos to you for doing it, for doing the
Hmm.
hard thing.
Yep, you too.
Yes. Hopefully it all pays off, right?
I hope so too.
Mhm. And I really do feel like a lot of the authors that have blown up over the years, it often isn't until they're several books into their career that they
Hmm.
really get picked up. They really get noticed. They hit the right groups and they just blow up as like whispers and word of mouth start getting around of, oh,
Hmm.
have you read that? It's amazing. The publishers don't know what that magic is about the books, what makes one book fly while the other one plummets. We don't
Hmm.
the entertainment industry with movies too, they never quite know which books are going to have that magic or not. So,
Yeah, and it's sad because I feel like we are like I know a lot of people query agents. I tried to query agents and
mhm,
I got all rejections. But it's just I hate that we're at the mercy of like other people because a lot of it has to do with their own personal preferences. Like if they like it, they like it. If they don't, like, you could have a whole ton of people that could absolutely love the book, but
mhm,
because an agent isn't really into it, you'll never know. So I think that's why with the indie publishing, it's good too because if we allow an agent to kind of like all the rejections get to us, we never know unless we try it on our own. So kind of
mhm.
like taking control of the narrative and allowing us to see like what the readers actually like.
Yes, yes, and it is absolutely false that an indie author had to be indie because they weren't good enough to be traditional. That
Hmm.
is absolutely not true. You have to first find the agent who likes your stuff and like can represent you, you know, their personal
Hmm.
preferences, and then they have to market your book to a traditional publishing house against so many others. And it could be that the publishing house just isn't looking for that genre, or oh, we're looking for mermaid books. We want unicorns. Like they're looking for a very specific thing, and it has nothing to do with the quality of your manuscript. It's just what are they looking for at that moment, you know. it's 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 amazing that anybody gets published at all traditionally, honestly.
Yeah, and then I've seen a lot of indie authors who have been picked up by agents because
Yes.
they've seen them doing well on social
Hmm.
media and they want to represent them. So a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
times you just got to go for it and take control of the narrative and just do the best you can. I mean,
Hmm.
it's tough out there, but you got to just keep going and you got to have
Hmm.
belief in yourself. And when you
Yes,
bet on yourself, you can't lose.
I think so. Yeah, yeah. And don't get me wrong, like I do have like the traditional authors are amazing, and
Mhm.
I just don't feel like one route is more valuable than the other. Like they're
Yeah.
just different ways of publishing. They're just
Mhm.
different ways of getting your books out there. But yeah, I think that indie publishing is kind of a brave option because it's you, it's all you. You're the marketing team,
Yeah.
in many cases you're the designer of your cover, and if not you doing it, you have to pay someone else to do it, and finding those extra funds can be so difficult. I don't think most people have any idea how much it costs to produce an audiobook. Like they
Yeah, and that's the other part about being an indie author is it's the you're forking out the cost yourself, and it's tough because you got to get the covers. I mean, a lot of stuff you can do on your own, but sometimes it's better to reach out to a professional.
have.
Um, if you have the talent and the skills, that's great. But,
Yeah.
like editors are expensive, formatting is expensive, copywriting is expensive, and
Mhm.
then even trying to get audiobooks. Like I want to do audiobooks for my book, but I just don't have the money because I never realized how expensive it was to produce an audiobook. When I went to look into it a couple of years ago and I saw some of these prices that these narrators were, quoting, I had like sticker shock. And it's, of course they deserve it because it's a lot of work to produce an audiobook. But if
Mhm.
you're not making the money selling your books, like you can't reinvest that into something like an audiobook. And it's tough because it really is a lot of money.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I feel like there is so much pressure on us as indie authors because not only do we have to sell our book at um a competitive price, but also so many of us are including freebies. We're adding stickers, we're adding bookmarks, we're adding art prints. I throw in like pins sometimes. Like, we write thank you notes. We spend time making our packages beautiful. I mean, I'm not speaking
Mhm.
for everyone, but so many of them. And there's this push to do PR boxes and to just keep going above and beyond just to be competitive. And so with everything that you throw in there, like your profit margin is getting shaved off. So when
Mhm.
you're making like $1 a book and you're trying to save for a $3,000 audiobook,
Yeah.
it's so much. That's if you're not even getting paid for your work at all. Like, oh goodness.
Yeah. And it's frustrating. And it's like, everybody gets paid before us. So it's like the editor, narrators, formatters, cover designers, they get their money and we have to hope
Money.
that the readers will funnel it, will buy our books so we can make that back. And the
Yes,
reality is that it really is a marathon, not a sprint. So
it is.
when you go into being an author and publishing books, you got to understand that you're in it for the long haul and there's no like get rich quick scheme with it. You just gotta put all your blood, sweat, and tears into it and just keep the faith.
Yeah. I believe one of our other authors said that you have to have a certain strong delusion in yourself of knowing that the odds are against you, but you have to keep going anyway, because if you give up, like, well, you're not going to make it, so you have to keep going until you do.
Agreed.
um, but yeah, it's a rough road.
Hmm.
And yet it's our favorite thing and we can't stop.
Yes,
Can't
it
stop,
is.
won't stop. All right, so for you, what is the most important part of writing?
So the most important part of writing for me would be the plot in general. Like I love like the escape, the being able to go on an adventure, escape reality, um go to other worlds. That's probably what I love most about it is like the plot, being able to be in control of the narrative and make it how I want to make it. Because I know there's a lot of times we read books by authors and we're just like, oh my gosh, why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? Or like in life we have like circumstances that are out of our control and we feel helpless, and when we write our books, like we're in control, we can make our world and make things happen the way we want to do that, and that's what I like the most.
Good answer. Yes, world building and controlling the narrative, telling a story that you want, that's from you.
Yeah,
Yes. I totally agree. Sometimes you just want to strangle these characters who you love so much, but you know, what can you do except write your own book? And it's funny that
exactly.
they say that you should write the book that you want to read. And I laugh. I'm like, you're going to read your own book so many times.
Oh yeah, I see that all the time. Write the book you want to read because you're going to read
Mhm,
it so many times. Yeah, that's what just happened with my recent release, Sephora, which is the first book in the
mhm.
fantasy series I'm writing. And I threw everything I had into that book, and I must have read that book so many times to the point where like I was going through like one more round of like final polish edits, and I was like, I'm so sick of reading this book. Like I know it word for word by now. I don't even got to
Mhm.
look at it, but I got to look at it because there's going to be that one grammar error that's going to slip through, or that one misspelling that I thought I had
Yes,
everything, and then when I read it later it's going to like pop up and be
I'm
like,
like
"Hey, jump
roaches.
scare me." And
Yes.
I'm going to be like, "Oh my god, you got to be kidding me."
Yes. And then it goes to print and you're like, oh, it's great. And you flip it open to a random page and bam, typo. And you're just like, I know that I read this. My editor read this. My beta
Mhm.
readers read this. Like we read this a million times each, and somehow there's still a typo. Like,
Yeah. That's when
but
you wanna, like, bang your head against the wall and be like, "Oh my god."
yes, yes. Okay. So when you're writing, do you usually start with character development or do you start with plot development?
I think it really depends on the story. Like, right
Mhm,
now, I have, like, this idea for a romantasy series, another romantasy series that I wanna write, but I just have, like, the basic idea, and then I have,
mhm,
like, a basic idea and then kind of, like, characters, so I start kind of, like, developing the characters a little bit first, and then from there, moving on to increasing the plot. So I work on, like, naming the characters, like, just stuff about them, and then from there I move into how are these characters gonna operate in this world that I'm gonna build and what's their connection, and it takes some time to get that all worked out
yes. How do you get to know your characters?
by doing a lot of thinking,
Mhm,
daydreaming, visioning, just kind of taking inspiration from, like, what you see, what you read, what you experiencing in life, and just kind of like twisting it and making it something that you think is unique that others will want to read.
yes. Just borrow bits and pieces and put it together into something new.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Do you have a favorite author and what's something that they do really well?
Favorite author. So I have a lot of favorite authors. So I love Rick Riordan. I love all his series. I've read everything pretty much that he
Mhm.
has put out. Um,
He has his
so
own dedicated shelf in my library. Like the
yes,
one shelf is all him. Like
yes, I've read all of his. The Percy Jackson. I've read the Kane Chronicles, Magnus Chase. If he had it, I've read it. So it's like
Mhm.
he's a big author that I love.
Yes.
Um, I was a very I love J.K. Rowling, even
Mhm.
though she's been in a lot of controversy, so you can't
Yeah.
always say her name too much, but I
It,
love the Harry Potter series and,
mhm,
the way it was written. And definitely right now I'm really loving Rebecca Yarros, so she's definitely is one of my favorite authors, and I'm liking the Emporium series, and she's actually gotten me out of, like, my reading slump through her books because I don't know, I went through this phase where, like, I couldn't really read anything because I guess I was just writing so much and reading my own work that
mhm,
I nothing really seemed to interest me to read, or, like, I would start reading it and it just couldn't hold my attention, and
mhm,
then I decided to give her books a try, because I had bought them, for, like, research purposes, because I'd seen the craze all over book talk, and I liked fantasy and dragons and
mhm.
romantasy, so I was kind of like, let me start reading,
Oh yeah.
and I
Yes.
did get into it, and so I definitely love that. So Rebecca Yarros and Rick Riordan are definitely some of my
Mhm.
favorite authors.
Yes. All artists study the masters as
Mhm.
like to learn their techniques, to learn how to do things. You're
Yeah.
not necessarily looking to rip them off. You're looking at how did they describe things so well? How did they do that movement? How did they make it concise, but or is it more flowery? Like, we study what's working so that we
Yeah.
can do that. Yes. And then we just love their stories.
Mhm.
But
Absolutely.
I've
And
heard
just looking for
author.
different ways to
Yeah,
do
yeah.
things.
It's hard to be an author and still hold on to the reader, like
Yeah, and I remember one another podcast I was on with a bunch of different authors, and one author, I forgot her name, she had told me during the podcast, like, you know, if you're an author, read a lot because reading other people's works is going to help improve your writing style because you see how they write and how they describe things or how they, are not using I 100 times in a first person point of view. And then by you reading that, you internalize that and make it your own for your own writing.
yes, and I completely agree with her. It's so very important to continue reading as an author.
Hmm.
Um, but again, it is really easy to fall into that trap of I don't have time for reading, or the book can't just hold me, or part of your brain is going into editor mode And so you're
Mhm.
like trying to pick it apart as if it's your own manuscript. And
Yes.
and then like it's hard to enjoy it sometimes, you know. But it when you do find a book that sucks you in, it's wonderful.
Mhm. Yeah, I love it too. So I just basically for me, anything romantasy
Hmm.
or a mystery will suck me in. So that's basically what catches my attention because it's hard to keep my attention now for some reason when I read. I guess because I'm constantly always doing stuff or writing. So it doesn't really allow the time for reading. So I need something that's going to grab my attention quick.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. We're tired. All right. What have you learned from the writing process? Something that you didn't know when you started out?
Oh, that is a marathon, not a sprint.
Mhm.
But there are so many components to it. And it's not just about writing it, it's about, everything that goes together to publish it. And then the marketing aspect. Like your book is nothing if you don't market it. So
Mhm.
being able to understand like the marketing. So right now, pretty much the only marketing tactics I do is my newsletter, and then I post on my social media channels on my Instagram, my YouTube, and TikTok. So that's basically been how I've kind of created a little buzz about my books and gotten, sales. And I hope to gradually improve upon that. But yeah, your book is like you could publish a book, but if you don't know how to market you're not going to see the return on investment that you want. So that's basically like it's like a funnel. So like there's so
Mhm.
many parts. Like not only am I an author, but I'm also like PR, I'm a representative, social media marketer. And it's like being able to think about like, oh, what are the emotional hooks that I can pull from my books that's going to grab the reader's attention when I post on social media and make them want to read it. Um, I never knew writing synopsises could be so hard. I can
Mhm.
write 120,000
Yes.
word fantasy book with no problem. And then you ask me to like sum up my entire book in like a paragraph, and I just can't do it. And I'm like, my synopsises I feel need work, and they are absolutely
Mhm.
horrible. That I just want to just kind of just be like, here, just read it. You'll like it.
Yes.
Like that's all I can really say. Like, what's your book
Yes.
about? Yeah, you just gotta
Like,
read
I
it.
don't
It's
know,
just
but it's really good.
there's too
Yeah.
much involved in it that you just need to
Mhm.
read it at this point because it's just
Yes.
I don't know how to like sum it up into a synopsis. I'm like, I don't know what to say. Like, it's
Mhm.
just like one of the hardest things that I've struggled with. I never knew that that was so hard to do.
Mhm. Because there's so many moving parts to it. We're both fantasy and twisty plot people. So
Yeah.
how much do you actually give away? That's my hard thing is,
Hmm.
especially with the tropes. You're like, if I put that trope on the list, it's gonna give it away. Like
Yeah, but then also it's like there's so much happening in this book,
Yes.
especially like with romantasy books and series.
Mhm.
Like they're doing so much stuff. And like in a 520-page book, they're doing a lot of stuff in 520 pages. I
Mhm.
cannot sum all that up into a paragraph. So there's stuff I'm going to be leaving out. So it's like, what is the most important stuff that I
That's the
can put
most
in this
important thing you
synopsis
need to
and
know. Yeah.
grab their attention to make them want to read
Mhm.
it?
Yes, you need your elevator pitch. You need your like you're talking to somebody and you need to sum it up in like a few sentences.
Hmm.
And then you have like your social media posts.
Hmm.
How much do you put on that social media post? Because you know that the more writing that there is, the less likely people are to read the whole thing.
Yeah.
But also it needs to be long enough to actually capture their interest. So it's a constant like seeing what works, right?
Yeah, it's like this constant battle. And it's like, and
Mhm.
then you'll find that you have to constantly change your synopsis as you go along because you'll think like, oh, maybe there's something better or something I could use to tailor it. It's just, it's rough. It's rough.
Mhm. Yeah, and the nice thing is that you can keep trying and see what works. Yeah.
Hmm.
But oh gosh, sometimes I think about all the opportunities I had to pitch myself and the imposter syndrome took over, or you're just like shy, or you don't you get tongue tied in the moment, and you're just like, I don't know, it's good. How like, and
Yes,
afterward
that's
you're
the
kicking
hardest part.
yourself. You're like, why didn't you pitch it harder? You know you have a good book.
I know. And that's the thing that I struggle with because I plan on going to like some author conferences in like the state that I live in. And I know some of them, they're going to be doing like pitches to agents. I don't know if I'm going to partake in it, but I'm just kind of like, I don't know what to say. They're gonna be like, "What's your book about?" And I'm like, I mean, you got to read it. Like, there's too much for me to say here. Like, just know it's good. I mean, but they're not going to take that because they're going to be like, everybody says that their book is good. And I'm just like, I don't even know. Like, how do I even pitch? Like, that's something that I need to work on is like knowing how to like pitch my book to make
Mhm.
people want to read it.
Absolutely. Yes. Marketing is like tiring and tricky, and there's so much competition.
Yes, it is.
hmm Yeah. For my back cover blurbs, what works really well for me is that I write my own and then I send it to a friend and they make some changes and send it back. And then I take like alter it a little more and send it to a different friend and they send it back with like their changes. And because when you have a community of book friends who also like to write and they are so happy to help you work on your thing instead of writing their own thing. They're like, you need help? Anything, bestie. Here we go. And some of them are actually quite talented. So between this committee of friends, I end up with something passable for a book blurb.
That's
But
awesome.
I think as authors, we have to be really careful not to isolate ourselves. We need to make this community, of people that you can rely on and go to for help.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think like especially with like the indie author community and the reader community, it's just I think the biggest thing is like it's not a competition. Like I've been seeing a lot of stuff
Mhm.
on Facebook about so much drama surrounding like authors, certain authors, and it's just like it doesn't need to
Yeah.
be that way. Like there is millions of people in the world. Like there is enough room at the table for
Mhm.
everybody to enjoy our reader books. Like we don't need to sabotage other authors, like gatekeep or not help people. It's just not right. And it's just, we have to understand that we are all a team and we should all be trying to build each other up and support each other with our
Absolutely.
books.
Yes, yes. Do not go after other authors. Do not go after reviewers. Let people like things they like. Like just there's so much of people trying to yuck other people's yum or to tear each other down because you feel threatened or oh their thing was a little too close to yours so you feel like you have to like lash out. No, no.
Hmm.
Leave it alone. Like leave it alone. Focus on you, and do your thing. And if you shine brightly, people will be attracted to that.
Yeah.
So, in fact, it's been pointed out that sometimes those 1 or 2 star reviews are like your best friends. Like other people will read the 1 or 2 star reviews and go, "That's the book for me." Like
Oh
I've
yeah, true. And that's another thing that we get into is reviews. Like
Mhm.
it's so hard one to get reviews and then two like it's just to me, like with me, when I have like my ARC readers, and I know like there's been a lot of like authors that have been saying they don't want no less than 4 stars or something like that. Like me, I'm just like I just want an honest review. Like just read
Yeah.
it and please post a review. Like as long as you post a review, you're good. Because honestly, with me, like I want to know the truth about my book. Like I don't want
Mhm.
any like fakeness. I don't want any kind of like
Mhm.
imitation. Like I want to know if my book sucks. I want to know. Like granted,
Mhm.
I will probably cry and it will break my heart, but I at least want to know. That way I can better me as an author and I can improve for the next book. And I feel like when you see like the 1 and 2 star reviews, like, yeah, they hurt because some people are like ruthless, but then that's their opinion. Like, there are some people on these review sites that are absolutely like ruthless. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, oh my. And it's just like, but then like
People
I
still
feel like
don't
the
know how
one
to
and
be
two star
happy.
yeah, I feel like the 1 and 2 star reviews make it more authentic because like not everybody's gonna love your book. So like
It
when I see
does.
like a
Yes.
1 or 2 star review, I'm like, yes, my book is authentic now because now I got.
Mhm.
Of course, we want
It's a
more 4 and
milestone.
5 stars than 1 or
Mhm.
2, but like 1 or 2, like here and there, like I feel it makes it more authentic. So
Mhm.
I don't want a whole ton of them, but
No.
1 or 2 make it more authentic, and it
Yes,
feels
no.
like the book is more real and genuine.
Mhm. If you go to, like, any kind of book rating site, either on Amazon or Goodreads, and you only see 5 or 4-star reviews, you're like, "It looks suspicious," like,
Hmm.
"What's going on here?" But if they have a few bad reviews, you're like, "Oh," like, "this book is more widely read,"
Hmm.
and it's curious to see what those people didn't like. But I am definitely grateful for every review that I get, like, even those 1 or 2 stars, like, "Thank you for giving my book a chance." But yes, I have had a friend who's like, you know what, I didn't love it. I'd give it 3 stars. And I'm like, do it. Get on there, give me 3 stars. I need the reviews. Like,
Oh yeah, like getting reviews is like it's so hard, and it's just like, please, like I appreciate any review I get, and I'm just
mhm.
like, oh my god, please write a review. When people tell me on like social media they like my book, and I'm like, oh my god, I hope they wrote a review. Like I hope they did just to like help it, because the more like reviews you get, the more eyes it puts on it,
Mhm.
and it just can really help your book grow.
The algorithms recognize what books are getting rapidly like more reviews and doing well, and they want, like, it helps the sites know what books they should be promoting,
Hmm.
and when people go on there, like, they do see it, they do see what your rating is, and
Yep.
it's really, really important, and it's so hard to get people to take the time for you. They're like, I love your book. And you're like, okay, did you leave a review? They're like, no. And you're like, tell a friend? No. Write a social media post about how much you loved it? No. But I loved it. You're like, please help me.
I know, but sometimes the fact that they love it is good. So hopefully,
Okay,
maybe
yeah.
one day they'll
We'll
tell
take
other
that
people.
much.
We'll take whatever we can get at this point.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have a favorite part of writing?
Favorite part of writing. So I would say like a lot of I would say banter. So I like to have a lot of like banter, a little bit of sarcasm, like
Mhm.
jokes to like make readers laugh in my books. So that's always my favorite part when I can like add the humor in there to make it seem more realistic and to just make somebody laugh out loud. I would
Mhm.
say being able to actually have like the different emotions and being able to bring the reader on an adventure. So definitely like adding humor and then being able to write the plot with like all these different like little twists and turns and being able to allow them to kind of escape reality and go on this adventure in their head and be able to be so drawn into the book. And that's kind of what, I've seen a lot on Book Talk, especially with Rebecca Yarros and Onyx Storm coming out, is seeing a lot of these readers posting about it and how they're able to have such emotional connection to these readers that they're like crying, laughing, they're like tied to them like they are their friends. And that's kind of what I want in my book. And that's like my favorite part of writing is being able to form those bonds between the readers and the characters and seeing the readers seeing like themselves and the characters and becoming so emotionally tied to these books that they absolutely love it.
Absolutely. It is a thing to make your characters like multidimensional, multifaceted people.
Hmm.
There's nothing like a book you read and the characters feel real to you. These are your friends. You were there every step with them.
Yep.
And you cry when the book's over because it's over. Like,
Yes.
um, yeah, so yeah. Favorite part of writing is just that immersion.
Yes. The connection, being able to form those bonds.
Hmm. Do you have a least favorite part of writing?
Editing.
Yeah. that was,
Editing. Oh
that's
my
hard.
God. Editing and then like the multiple rounds of um like when you get beta reading feedback and it's like you think that your book was good and then you get all this feedback with stuff that like you didn't think of. And I know like with my recent book that I published, I did like 3 rounds of beta reading edits, and my beta readers like they literally made me work for it. Like they were literally questioning everything. They were like like tearing certain things apart, which I appreciated and I loved, but it was just
Mhm.
like I had to take a lot of moments and be like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do with this. But it's like,
Humbling.
they definitely it is
Yeah.
humbling and they really make you work for it. And I think that's probably like it's like the growth part that's the least favorite. It's like we all want to write a book and just everybody immediately loves it. And it's like, yeah, I love this book, it's a star. But like the process of having to go through to get there, you really gotta like your blood, sweat, and tears and just kind of grind into it. And it's just like, it's hard, but it's something you gotta do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I experienced a lot of that just with my first book because I had it done and I was like, here, friend, read it like as a beta reader or an alpha reader. and like just the sheer volume of edits that it came back with just for chapter 1, I was like, oh, I actually don't understand commas. I didn't realize, like,
I
um
know it's hard because it's a very humbling experience because when you put
mhm,
yourself out there, like we're all human and we don't a lot of us don't take rejection very well or like criticism and it's something that as an author you have to learn. I mean like I'll always have like the sticker shock moment when you read it and you're like my heart
mhm.
is breaking. But then
Oh,
like
it's
you
so
need to
easy
take
to
a
feel
minute to
attacked.
like you
You're
need to
not
take a minute to like calm
yeah.
yourself and like get away from it and get it out of
Mhm,
your head and just like then sit back down and be like, okay, they're right. I need to change this
mhm.
and I have to do it because sometimes
You
like
have
I'll
to
get
be
these like
comfortable.
edits
Yes.
back and feedback back and I'll read and I'll be like, man, I suck. Like maybe this isn't my forte. Maybe this is not for me. And then you got to just be like, take some time away from it and then go back to it and be like, humble yourself and be like, yes, that did not make sense. I do need to make that clearer. So if a lot of people are saying it, then it's like, we got
Mhm.
to listen.
Oh, and absolutely. And you can't fall into the trap of comparing your only somewhat edited manuscript against, a traditionally published, polished, completed manuscript, masterpiece
Yeah.
book. You
And
can't
then
do that.
we think we
Yeah.
just, we do that a lot with it.
No,
And we got to
don't
stop
start that
ourselves and
way.
be kind, be
They
kinder
go
to
through the
ourselves.
same process of edit after edit after
I know.
edit. You have to polish and polish and polish until it shines, you
Yeah.
know. But oh goodness, it's a process.
Yes, it is.
Like walking up a hill, walking up a mountain to get to the top.
Yep.
Do you have any major influences on your writing?
I would just say like life pretty much, like certain stuff that I've experienced, stuff I've come across, stuff I've seen. And then most of the stuff that I've envisioned in my own head and, stuff that I read, stuff that I see, those all kind of factor into, ideas that fuel into something original for me.
Yeah, yeah. Like we were saying earlier, you gather just a little bit of everything, and
Hmm.
it comes together. We give our characters like bits and pieces of ourselves. We give the
Yes.
plot pieces of our lives. And it's funny when people ask, well, which is there a character that's you? And you're like, well, they're all me, but
Hmm.
none of them are. Like,
Yes.
uh, it's really hard to describe that to someone who isn't a writer.
Yeah. That is tough.
Um, do you ever deal with writer's block?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
God, yes. It happens a lot. Like not a lot, but it happens more than what I can what I would like. And I think a lot of it has to do with me putting pressure on myself and like a lot of my, stuff that I have going on in my life that I allow to affect me when I have to realize that when it's my time to write, I just have to empty my mind and just focus on the characters instead of thinking about like all the pressures and stressors of life and just like not comparing myself and not putting a whole ton of pressure on myself and thinking like, oh, I'm never going to be like Rebecca Yarros. Like, I'll never write a book as good as her, or like, I'll never be like this. And it's just like taking that negativity away and just
Yeah.
focusing on like, I'm going to write this book because I love writing and I know that this is a story that somebody's going to want to read one day. So just kind of like not putting a whole ton of pressure on yourself because I find that's where a lot of my writer's block emulates from. It's like life circumstances, pressure that I put on myself, like depression sometimes. And you got to try to just like empty your mind and push through it and focus on the story.
Mhm. Yeah, you have to find a mantra to hold on to or something that you can tell yourself to get you through those really defeating times for
Yes.
certain. I have one reader who like was a stranger to me before she started reading my books. And she told me like, you're my favorite author. And I was just like, so I've really held on to that. Whatever I'm writing, whenever I felt defeated, I think about that one reader who told me that. And I'm like, I have to keep going for that reader because like someday she won't be the only one, you know?
Agreed. And sometimes I like when I see people like posting kind things about my books, I like screenshot it. Or when people
Yes.
send me a message, I
Mhm.
screenshot it and I put it into like an album on my phone. So when
Yeah.
I'm feeling down, I scroll through it to make myself like, oh, these are the people that believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. So I have to just do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it really does make all the difference, all these kind words.
Yes, it does.
All right, what would you say has been your most significant writing victory so far?
Being able to publish the first book in my fantasy
Yes.
series that I've had forever, that I feel like I've written this book for like 10 years and it's come across so many changes. And finally being able to publish the first book in December of last year was a huge accomplishment for me.
Yes, that first book. There's nothing like it, right?
Hmm. Yes, yes.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And then so I didn't check beforehand. You have two books out? Is
I
it?
have 3 books
You have three
out.
books.
So 2 of them are standalone, and one is the first book in a fantasy series.
Do you have them handy? Do you want to show them off and tell us a little bit about them?
Yes. So this was my first book that I wrote. This is Hickory Dickory Death. This is a standalone, and it is a gothic romance with magic. So it's kind of like Harry Potter meets Jane Austen kind of book. And
I love
then
the title.
thank you.
It's
And
catchy.
then I wrote this book. This is Sleigh Bell, and this is a Christmas romance book. So it's like a loose retelling of Beauty and the Beast with like those Hallmark vibes that you like.
Yeah.
This was a book that I did. And then this was the one that I published last year that I'm working on. This is the first book in a fantasy series. This is called Sephora, the Sephora series. The first book is Shards of Secrecy, and it combines Egyptian mythology with sorcery. So it's like a fantasy with a
Exciting.
slow burn, forbidden love, romanticy, and it has Egyptian gods, sorceresses, alternate realms, portal fantasy, and it's been a lot of fun. And then there's original artwork in this book, and my sister drew the drawings.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to open it?
Sure.
Show us one.
Let me see if I could get to a good one. Um, so yeah, so like this one kind of here, if you could see, this is like
Oh,
one
very,
of the
very.
drawings. Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, so we've done like a lot of original. She's done a lot of the drawings, so each page has like different drawings before each chapter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's exciting. How
Mhm.
fun.
Yeah.
All right. And then have you ever been given writing advice that just like really didn't resonate with you? Like you hated that advice. Why would they even say that?
I don't know. I'm trying to think. I'll probably remember later. But I would definitely say like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. One was saying that like you shouldn't be using adverbs when you're
Oh my
writing.
goodness.
Like,
Yeah.
what? I mean, I kind of was like, I heard somebody saying that in, I don't remember, in like a group or something that I was in. And I kind of was like, what? Like,
Mhm.
I don't what? Or it's like, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like, you can't always go with what's popular. And sometimes you got to make executive decisions
Mhm.
because you're the author, you're the boss. And it was like some of the stuff too, like with some of my edits, like the editor was like changing stuff in my edits. And it wasn't like grammar. It was more like my writing style. It was like trying to change my writing style. And I was kind of like, no. I'm making the executive decision here and we're going to, go with it. It may not be the most popular, but at least it's me and I'm staying true to myself. So yeah. But that adverb thing threw me for a loop. I was like, no adverbs. Like what?
Yes.
I don't understand that. Um,
You need to find an editor who understands your voice and doesn't try to change your voice for sure.
Yeah, that's probably been the hardest thing for me is trying to find an editor that, you can form a connection with and that resonates with you. It's hard. It's hard.
Yes.
And there's like so many people that are editors and, they don't always have the qualifications, but it's like everybody says they're an editor and
Mhm.
everybody has their own editing style and it's a lot of times you got to make those executive decisions like this is a grammar issue or like a verb tense issue, like I see it. But when it comes to like my writing style and who I am, 'cause I've known a lot of authors and even I've dealt with that with editors in the past that actually like change your voice and it's becoming more like their story as opposed to yours. And I think there's that fine line with like
Mhm.
the author editor relationship where it's like, they have
Mhm.
to be able to understand your voice and edit in your voice.
You want someone who's going to elevate you, but
Mhm.
not change you. Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, the adverb thing kind of like I understand to a point where they're coming from because like any other thing, you don't want to overuse them,
Hmm.
you know. But at the same time, I mean, I know an editor who only allows like no more than 2 adverbs per page. And I'm just like, no, sometimes there isn't a stronger verb. Or sometimes they are doing something in such a way that requires an adverb. Like they're there for a reason, you know.
Yeah. It is true. Well, I mean, you could say that with anything. Like too much of it is, too much. Like you could say that with adjectives. Too many adjectives would be too much. It's just,
Yes.
I don't know. I think it just depends on how you work it.
Mhm. You wouldn't write run quickly for sure. You would write sprinted or, bolted. Sometimes there is a stronger verb, absolutely. But
Yeah.
sorry, this is a personal like a personal peeve with me.
No, that's fine. I mean, I feel the
Mhm,
same way. And then also, like, another struggle is
mhm.
definitely, I mean, this is not really related to writing advice, but just for me, it's like a personal struggle is not using the same word twice in like a
Yes.
paragraph. Like, you have to become like a synonym, like
Mhm.
diva. Like, many times how I Google like other words for, I don't know,
Yes.
opened, other words for, this word, and just trying to figure out the closest synonym so you're not repeating words in a sentence. That's probably the most like tedious, aggravating, like hair
Mm.
pulling expenditure to go on is making sure you're not repeating the same word in the same paragraph.
Yes, or the same page or yeah, sometimes, I use the search function constantly
Yeah.
for my editing, and I just look up, okay, how many times did I use the word smile or grin? How many times did I use the word nod? Or,
Yeah.
oh gosh, just
Yeah, it's just like other words, like constantly Google like other words for
yeah,
this, like other words for this, like
mhm, and it's hard
thesaurus.
because you wanna show what the characters are doing, and
Yeah.
so much of communication is our faces, our hands, our word, our tone, but you have to say it in a different way, otherwise it becomes repetitive, and goodness, is this writing thing so hard.
Yes. It's a lot of work.
Yes, but, congratulations to you. You've, 3 books out and still going.
Thank you. Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, can you take a moment to tell our listeners where can they find you online? What social medias do you frequent? Where can they learn more about you?
Okay, so I write under a bunch of pen names. So to keep them all under the same umbrella on my social medias, I call myself the Blue Eyed Writer. So pretty much on every single social media platform, you could find me at the Blue Eyed Writer. So I am on TikTok, I am on Instagram, I am on YouTube. Those are the three main portals that I work on. I also have like a Blue Sky and Lemonade, but I don't really use it that much. Threads, I'm on Threads as the Blue Eyed Writer. And then I have my newsletter, which if you go on my social medias, the link is in the bio to sign up for my newsletter. So TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Threads as the Blue Eyed Writer.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And thank you to our listeners and join us next week. And remember, there's always more than one way up a mountain. To be on our show, find us at social media at The Tell Not Show or email us at thetellnotshow@gmail.com. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks again for listening. If you enjoyed the show, consider subscribing and liking. We appreciate all the support. Julia J.K. Allen is an author, editor, and coach and can be found at hijingsrudder.com.
Kirsha Fox is an author, avid reader, gamer, and mother to four, and you can find her at kirshafox.com. Thanks and see you next time.